Okay, so before I start, I would like to give you a little bit of background information. A few years ago, I decided to shift gears and focus my research on a different discipline from literature, which is my PhD background. I still do research on Hispanic women's literature, but now I also focus on a new field. And this new field is translation and interpreting. So because of this new interest, a few years ago, I created two courses, Spanish 3740 and Spanish 4740. The title was Translation and Interpreting 1 and Translation and Interpreting 2. But the semester before my sabbatical, I decided that we would be able to serve the students better if we focus those two courses only on translation. And that decision was also based after I started reading a lot of translation studies, because this is something that I'll self-teaching, learning. And so now the two courses are, the title is, or the focus is 3740 direct translation, that is Spanish into English, and Spanish 4740 reverse translation, English into Spanish. And I'll explain later what that means. So what I did during my sabbatical was creating syllabi and gathering materials to create a course pack that will focus 100% on direct translation for the course that I'm going to teach in the fall, 3740, and materials for a course pack that focuses 100% on reverse translation, Spanish 4740, that I will teach in the spring. And on top of that, I also developed and created a totally brand new course, which is 3750, Introduction to Interpreting, and there's potential to create a 4000 level later in the future, which will be, it could be a specialized course on interpreting, such as court interpreting or medical interpreting. There's a lot of potential for that. Now, let's see. Okay, so I want to give you some facts that will explain why I'm doing this. And also, these facts will help you have an idea of what comes forward in the slides. So according to a report published by Career Builder in June 2015, translation and interpreting is one of the fastest growing industry in the country by job growth. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts a 46% increase in translation job opportunities between 2012 and 2020. Also in the report, America's 25 Thriving Industries, published by 24/7 Wall Street Journal, translation and localization ranked as the second highest most thriving industry. And from 2005 through 2014, employment grew almost 100%. And also, the single largest group of translating and interpreting positions in the federal government, not that the federal government is the only one, but when it comes to federal government, it's in the intelligence community. So the FBI, the NSA, National Security Agency, the FBIS and JPRS, which fall under the CIA, and that stands for Foreign Broadcast Information Service, which is the predecessor of today's Open Source Center, and the Joint Publication Research Service. And also others involve or include the Department of State, the Library of Congress, several agencies of the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, the Department of Commerce, Social Security Administration, and the National Institutes of Health. Now, why this growth and why this marriage between language, service industry, and global business? Well, because it is thanks to professionals such as specialist translators, reviewers, linguistic copywriters, and language technology experts that organizations get to speak locally and grow globally. Also, for every sentence that a translator translates, he or she must be able to decide on the importance of its cultural context. So the translator must be able to decide what the phrase, not only what the phrase really means, not necessarily what it literally means. Right? So the translator then must convey that meaning in a way that makes sense in the target language, but also in the target culture. And I want to give you a couple of examples of so that you can see why culture is so important. The American Dairy Association, the logo, everybody knows the logo, got milk. Right? So the American Dairy Association translated that as, are you lactating? And also that was the meaning in Spanish. Also the Braniff Airlines, which is a company that operated airline services back in the 90s, they had a logo that said, fly in leather. And they translated into Spanish that as fly naked. And those who know Spanish know why fly naked, right? So, okay, I need to hurry up. So what? So the intention behind all these changes is that if we have a modern curriculum, that the students will be served better, and we will enhance and make more appealing our Spanish commercial major and minor and our institutional certificate in Spanish, which is, we created it for professionals who already know the language, but they want to expand their skills and proficiency. And the students, our students, because of those 2 years that they live abroad, they know the culture and the language. These are some of the basic concepts that I had to learn while doing my research and study. Anybody knows the difference between a localization translator and a specialized business translator? Anybody? No? Or the difference between interpreting and translation? Translators work with the written word and interpreters with the spoken word. And it is thanks to localization translators that we have logos such got milk well translated. They're making a product sound as if it had been created in the target culture or market. Are you lactating, right? It doesn't make any sense. So during my sabbatical, besides doing all these changes in curriculum, I also decided that, what better way of teaching how to do something than doing that thing yourself. So my intention is to become a certified court interpreter in the state of Utah. So I started studying and preparing to complete the 7 steps that are involved in taking the national certification examination. And I completed 3 out of 7. There's a lot of money and time commitment in that, so it's going to take a while. And also, the national examination certification has 3 sections in that exam, and 1 for each of these type of interpretation: consecutive, side, and simultaneous. Does any of you know what that means? The difference between that? So it's a very intense exam. Side interpretation is when they give you a document. It could be an affidavit or a warrant or any legal document, and you have a minute to read over it and then start translating. So you have to read it in the target language that you're translating into. And then consecutive interpretation is when you have the speaker says a couple of sentences, then they stop, and then you translate or, well, interpret, and you can take notes while you're listening and then interpret. And the most intense and difficult is the simultaneous interpretation, which has very little delay. This is usually used in a conference like United Nations. So the exam also has a section on that. So it will, by doing this myself, I think that I can teach the students better. I did more things during my sabbatical. The whole report is in the dean's office. You're welcome to read it if you want to. One last thing is that I was appointed state coordinator for the NAWSA suffragist project. So if you are interested in having your graduate students or even yourself, if you're interested in participating in this research and author bio sketches of Utah women, please let me know, and I'll get you started. Thank you.